Hello everyone, I'm bringing you the Mannequin of the Month for December 2025 today. As is usual, the topic we're going to talk about here was chosen via a poll over on Patreon, and that is the kit of a British infantryman serving in Brunei in late 1962, December 1962, which fits rather nicely, as was the case with last month, fits rather nicely with the monthly theme of Mannequin of the Month. Now, there are actually two topics which topped the poll together, 50-50 split on those, and I did a coin toss to see which would be the Mannequin of the Month for this month. This one came out on top. I can't do the other one as a bonus mannequin this month. I won't have time. It's a very busy month for me, Santa specials at the railway where I volunteer and so forth. So that will be the Mannequin of the Month for January, and then there will be two new options in addition to the existing option. It's a three-way poll. There are three options on the poll each month. There'll be two new options in February, so I hope that's acceptable to Patreon supporters. That's the way I've sort of worked out to deal with this, because I will not have a chance to make a video covering the other mannequin option as a bonus mannequin this month, unfortunately. Getting to the topic of hand, we're talking about, as I say, the kit of a British infantryman serving in Brunei in late 1962. What was a British infantryman doing in Brunei in late 1962? Well, it was a response to the Brunei revolt, the Brunei uprising, and this was an uprising against the Sultan and particularly his intentions to join the Federation of Malaysia. So in that regard, this serves as a stepping stone between the Malayan emergency, which was to some degree still ongoing at the time, and would continue on for many, many years at a low level, although effectively the emergency had come to an end officially in the early 1960s. You then have this is a stepping stone to the Indonesia confrontation. And the reason for that is Indonesia backed the rebellion in Brunei, and when it wasn't a success, they began their cross-border operations, Sarawak. And that is really sort of the progression from the Malayan emergency, formation of the Federation of Malaysia, the Brunei revolt, and then the Indonesia-Borneo confrontation. And a lot of people sort of view the Brunei revolt in 1962 as the first step in the Indonesia confrontation. So from that point of view, it's quite interesting. Another point that's interesting is some of the kit used, and this is a rare opportunity to talk about British troops wearing steel helmets and carrying their respirators in Southeast Asia. Very unusual, and would be seen in a limited degree in late 1962 for involvement in dealing with the revolt, and not always in every instance of troops deployed to Brunei. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we progress with the video. So, talking about the kit on a mannequin, the first thing to mention is the Mark IV steel helmet, which is worn here. This is a Mark IV steel helmet fitted with the 1956 pattern liner, sometimes referred to as the Mark V, but it is the Mark IV with the updated liner. And this has been covered with a piece of hessian and a nylon scrim net or camouflage net over the top there. Scrim could be applied to this, of course, to give extra camouflage, but this is not uncommon to see at the time helmet setup as we have here. It is unusual to see them worn by British troops out in the tropics, but troops deployed to Brunei did quite commonly wear steel helmets. It became less common as the operation went on, and then obviously moving into the Indonesia confrontation, you don't see helmets worn at all really. So this is a rare example of that I wanted to recreate on the mannequin here. The hot weather hat we've talked about previously on the channel, the jungle hat, was the typical headwear for British troops in the jungle. At this time, it's unusual to see helmets worn. But as I say, in Brunei, you do see period photographs. It's very common to see them worn. And we'll talk a little bit more about the unusual elements of the kit as we carry on looking at the mannequin here. The uniform worn is the 1950 pattern jungle green uniform. Of course, 1950 pattern was made in khaki and in green, as we have here, for arid and obviously tropical jungle environments, respectively. So we have the cellular bush jacket here. This is worn tucked in as a shirt rather than being worn as a bush jacket, and the belt's been removed to make it a little bit more comfortable to wear in that manner. Very common to see. This is probably the most common combination of uniform to be seen in photographs of troops deployed in 1962, is the 1950 pattern uniform. The two breast pockets there, which are slightly scalloped pocket flaps, double pleat down the front there, and then the trousers have the buckle, crossover belt buckled waist fastening with buckles round on the hips, and a belt that crosses over in the middle here to fasten around the waist. The equipment is the 1944 pattern equipment. You do see some limited use of 1958 pattern as well, but most of the photographs show 1944 pattern. And this is set up in a stripped down configuration, but basically per the fitting instructions, in that you have the pouches supported by the braces here, as you can see, worn fairly far around on the front of the belt. As the operations would progress, the equipment would quite often be stripped down further. You often see the belts worn alone with pouches slung from them. And obviously, as the Indonesia-Borneo confrontation became more intense, troops deployed were given quite a bit of scope in personalising their kit, the web equipment that they wore in the field, depending on the unit, of course, but that's just something to mention here. This is set up effectively as it should be, really, with the pouches supported by the braces here. The two large ammunition pouches you can see at the front here have a quick release fastening there, as you can see. Each of these would carry ammunition for the self-loading rifle, the SLR, which was, of course, the standard rifle of the British Army at this time, having been introduced in the very late 1950s. And the web belt here, of course, is in three parts. Just notice the buckle there has come slightly adrift, so I'll just tighten that up. And there we go. Slight wardrobe malfunction in the middle of the video there. But you have the Mills patent buckle there, and obviously it's a three-part belt. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we move this round. So that's the front of the Mannequin anyway. You can also see the respirator haversack on the left hip here, but I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get round to it as we move this round. So we'll move this round now and have a look at the right-hand side first of all. Looking at the right-hand side of the Mannequin here, you can first of all see the side profile of the Mark IV steel helmet there, quite a distinctive profile, even with the Hessian and the net over the top of it. Epaulette up on the shoulder of the shirt here, or the bush jacket rather, and then you have the sleeve rolled up there, as you can see, which is very common to see at the time. And then looking at the web equipment, round on the belt here, we've an interesting feature to mention that is not relevant particularly to what we're talking about here, but this was an original element of the design intended to stabilise the rifle when carried on its sling, and this would pass around the stock of the rifle number 5. Generally speaking, that was what it was intended for anyway. Very rarely used in that role and often removed, but in this case it's still present on the belt. And round behind that we have the machete carried on the belt here. Now this is a Second War era machete, still very commonly issued at this time. It's very common to see this pattern of machete carried both in Brunei and later on during the Indonesia confrontation. And you can see here we have the three-part belt. The forward section of the belt ends here and clips onto the rear section. You can see here the extra strap coming around from the braces, which mean that this can be unbuckled. Indeed, the sections of the belt can be unbuckled from one another and the whole set carried to allow greater ventilation and so forth, try and cut down on issues with sores and so forth from wearing the equipment in tropical conditions. So that's another interesting feature of this equipment, which was of course designed as part of, well, it was issued as part of the late war jungle equipment, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in an upcoming video. Little teaser there. We'll move this round now and have a look at the back. Looking at the back here, one of the most interesting things to look at is the design of the braces for the 1944 pattern equipment. As you can see here, you have a total of 4 straps coming off the wider shoulder sections. On each side you have a strap coming down to this side attachment point here, just underneath the arm, and then the others come down to these buckles on the back of the belt in typical British style, as you can see. In the centre of the back of the belt we have the 1944 pattern water bottle and its cup inside the carrier, and this hangs from the belt using M1910 type hanger hooks, which use this low set of eyelets on the belt. There's only one set of eyelets on the bottom of the belt because they're designed to carry this, and also in some instances there was an intention this would be used with US equipment, machetes for example, and of course the 1944 pattern machete has a set of these hooks on it as well, the sheath rather, in order for it to be carried on the belt, slung below as we have here with the water bottle carrier. So that's another feature of the 1944 pattern design that's worthy of comment. This is the earlier pattern of bottle with the metal cap, as you can see. By this time the rubber cap was in use, was around, but a lot of the photographs from 1962 show this cap in use, this type of bottle, so I've decided to go with that in this instance. We'll move this round now and have a look at the left-hand side. Looking at the left-hand side here, the main thing to talk about is the respirator haversack carried around on the hip, and this is a respirator haversack for the light anti-gas respirator, which was still the standard British respirator at this time, obviously having its origins in the Second World War. Interesting to see it carried in the tropics, which is very unusual, certainly in this style of operation. My assumption is these were carried, orders were for these to be carried in case anti-riot agents were used, which would make good sense. They are a good protection for that, against that sort of agent, obviously being a a respirator designed for anti-gas use. So if riot agents, anti-riot agents had to be used, having a respirator on you, very important, of course. Troops on patrol, you often see these ditched, but there are plenty of photographs showing men carrying them as we have here. Important point to notice, the strap of the respirator haversack is underneath the equipment, which means that this can flop around at the hip in a limited arc. It can't just sort of rock and flap about willy-nilly. It's obviously somewhat secured by having the carrying strap looped underneath the belt there. And again, this is a fairly common way to see these carried at the time. Looking underneath this, hopefully you can see, I'm not sure if the camera will come down this far, you can see the map pocket on the side of the leg of the 1950 pattern trousers there. Just another detail to note there. And that's basically it. I think we've covered everything there, looking at the various different sides of the Mannequin. So I hope you found it interesting looking at this. It's nice to get some jungle kit out on the Mannequin once again. It's certainly a great interest of mine is the Malayan emergency, the Brunei revolt, and then moving straight into the Indonesia confrontation. That sort of 1950s through 1960s jungle warfare period for the British Army, very interesting. I find it very interesting anyway. And obviously it's all part of the end of empire, really. The formation of the Federation of Malaysia and the way that affected local politics and obviously therefore armed insurgency, armed rebellion and so forth. So it's quite interesting from that sort of wider perspective, and also in terms of the kit and so forth that was used by British troops deployed on operations in Southeast Asia at the time. So as I say, I do hope you found it interesting looking at this. If you have and you'd like to see more of this sort of thing, please do consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the notification button down below, and that will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my content and you would like to support the channel, you can. Both Patreon and PayPal are linked down below. As I always say, a huge thank you to everybody who supports the channel using those two methods. It really is greatly appreciated. And it's the corporal tier over on Patreon where you get a chance to vote on what's going to be covered each month. There are 3 options. And as I say, in January, I'll be doing an option that's already been picked. And then in February, there'll be 2 new options on the poll and 1 existing one, which is yet to be voted on. So if you're interested, that's over on Patreon. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can. Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are all linked down below, and there will be photographs of this posted up there as well if you'd like to look at it sort of on I do a photograph of each angle if you'd like to have a look at it in a bit more detail. And if you'd like to get in touch with me but you don't really use social media, there is of course an email address in the description as well. That's everything for this video, so until next time, bye for now.